The Practical People is brought to you by...
Oh no. It's all going to start over again.
She thought she'd found something in one of her books that wound up with her research. She put them together, and then she told me she talked to someone from another dimension.
Jacob, all I want to do is find my sister.
Be very careful with Jacob Colt.
Where are we? I can't see a goddamn thing.
Oh, we're definitely still down the rabbit hole. For sure.
The observation collapses away. Attention to one thing.
We are one of many angles. This is the place where this angle faces. Do you understand?
Good morning, good evening, whatever time you're listening. Welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of the Practical People Practical Effects podcast show. I am your host, Christopher Moonlight, and I am super excited. I have two amazing practical effects artists on the show today. I'm really excited to welcome Damian Martin and Adam Johansen of Odd Studio. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hi, Chris. Hey, Chris. How are you going?
I'm really excited to have you on. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And as you know, I talked before the show. We like to kick off with a current event, just kind of break the ice. And as of the moment of the recording of this show, it is the 30th anniversary of a classic, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Predator, special effects by Stan Winston Studios, it was Stan Winston Studios at the time, and some amazing practical effects artists. I assume you guys are fans of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks for having us on the show. Yeah. Excited to be chatting to you today. Yeah, of course. Massive fans of Predator, and of course, yeah.
Now, I was pretty young when it came out. I assume you guys were were you in your teens when it came out? You couldn't have been in the biz already when that movie came out.
I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I think I was the right audience.
Had you tried your hand at effects? I mean, what when you go to, I mean, for me, Predator was one of those movies that just like captured my imagination. I think that was the, one of the movies that kind of like settled it for me. Like I have to be involved in this kind of business in some way. What you see that? What do you, coming out of the movie theater? Where's your head at?
Yeah, I mean, it was already set for me personally before Predator. Anyway, as a child, I was obsessed with films like the original Star Wars trilogy, of course, and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and E.T. and things like that, Gremlins. So I kind of was already obsessed with monsters, aliens, creatures, and then Predator just was another one, that was just like, wow, that's it was amazing. The practical effects were brilliant. So yeah,
I'm similar in that I was already well passionate about it and starting to play around with making things on my own before Predator, but it was just another affirmation that that's what I wanted to do. That's definitely the path to go down, and that Predator character is just fantastic.
Yeah, it's kind of coming out of the 80s. I mean, you had Aliens, you had Predator, you kind of had the slasher icons like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and that sort of thing. I mean, it's really kind of, I guess these characters that kind of came up and almost replaced, or not replaced, but, you know, in the same way that the Universal monsters had this iconography to them, suddenly we had these characters. I mean, the Predator, I think next to the Alien, really just kind of was, I mean, just like a game changer in terms of design and the way that they, you know, these monsters were presented. I mean, it's instantly recognizable. You know, I think I'd assume any special effects artist, I guess that's kind of like a dream, is to be able to come up with an original monster like that becomes an icon.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's unique in its own way.
Mm.
So, anyway, yeah, I mean, is it like, I don't know. I'm a big fan of the movie, the optical effects as well. I mean, have you guys ever dealt, before CGI became a thing, were you ever in the business asked to do any kind of optical effects like that? I mean, like in the vein of the camouflage, or were you guys always strictly kind of the makeup and the animatronics end?
Yeah, I'd say we're more, you know, very much in camera, practical effects, you know, prosthetics, creatures, animatronics, puppets, costume props, models and props, stop motion, those effects.
Okay, so you've done stop motion before, huh?
We've made a lot of stop motion puppets.
A lot of stop motion puppets.
Not actually animated. But more making models and puppets.
Oh,
how's the sound? Is that okay? There's a bit of workshop noise in the background. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, we can hear it as long as you guys are close to your computer. The closer in you lean to the computer, the clearer I'll hear you over the noise. But, you know, again, I appreciate that you guys are taking the time out of I mean, you're always working, and I know the life of an effects artist is, it's pretty constant and pretty unpredictable. So, but, you know, no, we appreciate that. We'd love to hear about what you guys are working on now as well. I'm interested in the stop motion stuff, because stop motion is one of those things, even though CGI has become a thing. I mean, recently we had Kubo and the Two Strings be a stop motion movie. I mean, there's still a desire for stop motion animation. People still want it. It's still a thing. Have you guys done anything recent?
I think the most recent thing we did was a commercial, really, wasn't it? I think. Yeah. It was a couple of years ago, but we made a bunch of puppets. It was for a car commercial. But no, you're absolutely right. People love stop motion. I mean, I don't think that's ever going to change. There's a certain charm to stop motion. I mean, my kid, you know, well, my daughter's, my oldest daughter anyway, is just obsessed and has been obsessed with Coraline ever since she was 4. And then that, you know, Fantastic Mr. Fox, all of those films are right up there. They're kind of favorite kind of film, really.
Now, I like that you brought up those two different stop motion animation films, because Coraline was kind of the beginning of when they were using 3D printing to kind of they use computer animation to figure out their animation. Then they would 3D print the different heads, and then of course they would hand paint them, and they would custom make the clothes. And then Fantastic Mr. Fox, I know that Wes Anderson, he wanted real fur on the animals, because just like in King Kong, when they would touch the animals to animate them, it would move the fur around, so you'd have this very distinct kind of constant movement of fur.
That's right.
And Wes Anderson said he wanted to feel the artist's fingerprints, which I'll never forget. I thought that was a wonderful statement. The artist's fingerprints on the puppets as they move. And I think for me, that's one of the things that I love so much about practical effects is each sculptor, each craftsman that works on that, you do kind of get a sense of where their hands have been. And it may not be always perfect, although sometimes it's pretty darn near perfect, but you always get a sense of an artist behind it, like you're watching a work of art moving in front of the camera. So did you guys use 3D printing in your stop motion, or did you do it by hand?
No, it was all by hand. Yeah, hand sculpted, molded, cast, and then actually there was lots of plasticine sort of expressions and things. We didn't do the animation. That was not us. That was but we made all the puppets and the sets and everything like that. So a lot of fun. Yeah.
So did you get to figure out the facial movements? Because did you do like the multiple heads?
No, we did hard faces with plasticine, movable eyes, weren't they? And then plasticine mouth. Yeah. So the mouth was resculpted. Mouths were resculpted in plasticine, match the background color of the hard plastic head.
Nice. So
the bodies were all posable silicon dummies with
So you guys do use 3D printing in your shop, though, right?
Yeah, well, Alien Covenant was sort of the first time we really started embracing the technology, to be honest. We really did, both studio and Creature Inc., so we worked alongside Connor O'Sullivan, and he was the same. Really started to look into the, 3D printing, using elements of that to incorporate that into the, everything really. Alien, the Xenomorph, bunch of things. But since Alien, we've sort of had a few projects where we've sort of embraced that technology as well. We find it's exciting actually.
Well, I mean, it must be, and I'm glad you brought up Alien Covenant, because I was trying not to geek out too soon over the Alien franchise stuff, because I absolutely love it. With the 3D printing, I'd imagine it's very handy, because before you'd have to sculpt something, you may have to come up with like little bits or materials that were very hard to mold or that sort of thing. And now you can, if you need something, like a part, like before there used to be a lot of kit bashing as well when it came to spaceships or sci-fi weapons. It's like now if you want a specific part, you can go and design it and have it printed out and refine it. And it's still a hands-on experience, because that part it's not finished when it comes out. You guys have to do more after that. You're just kind of printing elements, right?
That's right.
Yeah, everything needs reworking and finishing before it's anywhere near ready.
Yeah, it's another tool, but certainly not replacing sculpting or molding or casting or final construction or painting or anything like that. But it's there's certainly some advantages to it, and we had a lot of fun on Alien with that process.
Okay, I can't stop myself from geeking out anymore on this, because I watched the movie, and I also saw a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. You guys had visits. There were other. I was so jealous. There was and I'm blocking on the name of the show, but there was a specific online show that. What's that? Tested. Yes, Tested was there.
Okay.
And it was so fantastic, especially David's workshop, and those cross sections of the alien eggs and all the scrolls with the illustrations, and that was, you were asked by Ridley Scott to build all that stuff for Alien Covenant. I mean, you must have, I'm sure, as fans of the franchise yourself, that must have been just quite the opportunity. I mean, and did you guys get to work on Prometheus as well?
No, so we didn't do Prometheus. Alien Covenant was the first time we worked with Ridley, but so Connor O'Sullivan had done Prometheus with Ridley. He worked on the engineers, and going back a while, sort of, Connor came out to Australia. They were set to film Alien Covenant out here in Sydney, and I had a meeting with Connor and fans of each other's work, and we sort of worked out that it'd be great to collaborate on Alien Covenant together. So it was Damian and I and Odd and his company Creatures Inc. sort of set up a shop, a space in it, Fox Studios. And yeah, no, you're absolutely right. For me, Alien was another one of those films we were talking about before. That is one of the reasons I'm very lucky to be doing feature effects and the original, Giger and Ridley's Alien film and the Xenomorph. It's just, I don't know. I think it's a perfect creature. Yeah, definitely a benchmark.
This is, now I agree with you on this. This is one of those things I think it's kind of plagued me as an artist and a creator myself, is you see Giger's original Alien, and it's not just another monster. It's not scaly. It's not, it's slimy. It's got the drool, but it's, there's never anything like it. And you think, how do you come up with something original? How do you do that again? You feel like you can't, like everything, your mind just keeps going back to Giger. And luckily you guys kind of got the opportunity to kind of play around with Giger's ideas, which I think is fantastic. And, it's, and I don't know what it was like working with Ridley Scott. I've heard a lot of good things about his energy and his enthusiasm and his passion for just working every day. But, and I absolutely love David's workshop. I really did love the Neomorph as well.
Yeah.
And I can't help, I'm one of those people that read the original James Cameron Alien script, and there was actually a white alien in the James Cameron script as well. I don't know if Ridley Scott was trying to kind of make some callbacks to, I don't know, the fandom, or just some callbacks to those ideas that were kind of spoken of behind the scenes but never used. It seemed like there were a lot of those. But there's certainly some creepy ideas. When I was watching Alien Covenant in the movie with my wife, and she saw the stuff going in her ear, in the guy's ear, and and sorry for spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. I should have said that ahead of time, but I'll put it in the comments. But my wife leaned over and she's like, "Oh, that's my biggest fear." It's like stuff going in, she's afraid that like a spider will crawl in her ear when she's asleep or something like that. And then go ahead.
I was just saying, Ridley was fantastic at exploiting all the primal fears we have as humans.
Were those conversations when you had with him? Because I feel like the Neomorph kind of almost had like a larval look to it. It was like the opposite of biomechanic. It was kind of this larval, kind of maggoty, translucent skin.
Yes.
And it was just, what were those conversations? Can you talk about what those conversations were like in kind of creating the look and how it was going to be shot? And because you guys it was never intended to be 100% practical. You guys were told ahead of time you're creating something that's going to kind of be part of the process to the finished product, right?
Well, that's right. I mean, we the initial meetings with Connor, we sort of spoke about all the things that we knew we had to build. David's lab was always a part of it. We were very excited about that. All the engineers that populate the planet, mummify, Pompeii style corpses were always part of it. And then there's lots of we always knew we were making bodies for the death scenes, puppets, the Neomorph, various stages of its life cycle, facehuggers, eggs. We knew all that was coming, but it wasn't until well into production that initially there were no suits, there were no alien suits. It was all digital. There might be some reference heads, etc. But Ridley himself that did request suits. So once we, basically our workload sort of doubled because Ridley wanted the suits, and I mean I do think it's part of Ridley's process really to shoot and get as much as he can in camera it's part of his process, I think. So shooting it, lighting it, having the actors interact with it is part of the process. And to get where he ended up, and the visual effects guys ended up, has to do with the practical effects that we produced for the film. And actually, there's quite a few elements in there that is very much our stuff. So yeah, it's part of Ridley's process.
That must have been very satisfying, actually, because I mean, there were some complaints about there being too much CGI, but from what I'm getting from you guys, you did some work, some of it on the fly, that ended up being in camera because it was you did the work right, which obviously you would want to. I know that I think there was a comment. Well, I'll give you a little anecdote because I hang out on the practical effects forums, and some of your guys' behind-the-scenes photos got released. I don't know if it was through a magazine or on a website or something like that. And it was the raw footage, so it was uncolor corrected, and it was kind of in the article. It was held up against the CGI, and the people in the practical effects forums went, "Whoa, that's not fair. That's the finished CGI versus the raw footage." So people were actually going in and color correcting these raw photographs of your work and kind of admiring what you had done. And it looked very good. I think the neomorph suit you created was wonderful. And I gotta say, I think it was a stroke of genius. You had that, you kind of took like what Studio ADI did with the Goro suit, with the set of the extra body on top of the shoulders with the animatronic arms and head, and you kind of did like a puppeteer version of that, where you had a xenomorph top body sitting on a performer's shoulders, and then they were holding the arms on kind of like not marionette, but like a rod puppet. We're controlling the arms kind of in the same way. Or another example would be like C-3PO was operated in Star Wars Episode 1, where everyone thought it was CGI because you could see inside of him. But, I mean, did you guys had to come up with that on the fly? That wasn't originally intended?
No, yes, but yeah, it was a Bunraku style of puppeteering, and we built the puppet very similar to that on Farscape with Dave Elsey back in the day. But yeah, no, that's right. The xenomorph that Ridley wanted in Covenant was deliberately and obviously very different from the biomechanical xenomorph that we see. So our xenomorph was above 9 foot tall and incredibly thin proportions, insect-like, flayed sort of skin. So yeah, we had a couple of suits. Andrew Crawford was in the Bunraku one that you're talking about at the moment, on a couple of carbon fiber blades, with the head on top of his, coming off his own neck, which our head mechanic Greg McKee designed. So we had that one for wide shots and for most of the, wherever we could use that suit, we used it. But of course there was some really tight corridors, tight sets, that just simply wouldn't fit. So we had another suit worn by, and this was a more traditional foam latex man in a suit. Goran Declud was the performer, and he had the foam latex suit. There's no animatronics in that one. It was just for running around tight sets. In addition to that, we did have from the waist up an animatronic puppet. So that had a full range of movement. It had lips, it had the tongue, it had head, and then arms that could be operated as well. And that is the puppet that we used in the shower scene, coming into the scene there. So I think they're the images I think you're referring to that have popped up online. Photos taken from the set, and I have actually seen those. Yeah, I'm not sure what the deal is with those images. That's certainly not how it looks. They made maybe a raw image. I'm not really sure, but the color correction that I've seen people sort of do is closer to what it actually looked like. But Yeah, I mean, now the film's out, there are some images that are coming out that clearly show our practical suit and animatronic head of the xenomorph. So, people will get a better idea of how it looks.
Well, I think you did beautiful work, and so much so, I'm actually reminded of, back when ADI released their footage of the animatronics they did for The Thing after so much of their work got painted over by CGI. There's a lot of people that are going fishing for your work, and there's one comment I heard. And I think that it was a pretty good blend of CGI and practical. I really don't have any complaints about the CGI. Some people, there was one review, I watched a lot of reviews on the movie. One comment, I think it was a YouTuber named Sargon of Akkad, said he would have actually rather have seen a stop motion xenomorph running around on the ship rather than the CG one climbing around. And then there were a lot of people who kind of pondered, like, could some of this stuff been done practically, or maybe if it was kind of taken more back to the more mysteriousness of the xenomorph, like, could it have been done practically? And it's an interesting question because, I understand that Ridley Scott is going for something different, and it certainly is. I said in my own review of the movie that if the original Alien was the old dark haunted house, then Alien Covenant was kind of like the Island of Dr. Moreau mad scientist story. So obviously it's going to be a different sort of thing. But, I have to wonder, like, if you guys are been given the opportunity to do, like, miniature rod puppets of the alien jumping around the corridors or stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure you would have jumped at the opportunity to do something like that. So it's always kind of just funny. And like I said, not trying to knock CGI over practical one way or the other, but just it's always fun for me to kind of ponder, like, oh, if the practical team had been given that, like, how would they have handled it? Do you have kind of, if you were asked, I don't know if you have been asked, and if you have, then you probably are at liberty to say, but, if they came to you and said, hey, do you have ideas about how you would do this practically? I mean, do you have that kind of in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. We didn't have those conversations about doing the full-scale xenomorph in any kind of stop-motion or rod puppeteered sort of way, unfortunately. But we did build rod puppets for the baby neomorph. Actually, there's a couple of stages of the neomorph. So sorry, I'm just going to jump back to when a few minutes ago when we were talking about the neomorph.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
And the look of the neomorph. So Ridley referenced the goblin shark, and if you don't know what that is, have a look at it, Google it. It's quite a terrifying and beautiful real shark.
It has extending jaws, kind of like the deacon at the end of Prometheus. They kind of it like unhinges its jaws, and they kind of protrude out in a different sort of way, right?
That's right. It's fantastic. And for most of the stuff, I've got to say, just generally speaking, we often reference deep sea creatures and sea life because it's amazing. But it also has that kind of milky, kind of white, very translucent sort of skin, no eyes, and that's sort of where there was a bunch of designs already floating around for hundreds of artists, fantastic stuff, but Ridley hadn't really decided on anything in particular for the there was, like I said, the goblin shark reference, and there was a concept design from Carlos Swante that he sort of he quite liked, but really when we started filming, the design of the neomorph wasn't decided upon, so we were still designing the look of the neomorph well into the new year, a couple of months from filming. I personally was sculpting and sort of co-designing the look of the adult neomorph. And then we had Colin Sholver, who was doing a lot of stuff in ZBrush. working on the body, and Connor O'Sullivan was sort of bringing the two together in Photoshop to come up with a definitive sort of look of the neomorph. And it did. It took quite a while to land at something that really was, I remember, bringing it on set, and he was like, yeah, that's horrible. I love it. It's exactly sort of what he was hoping for. So and Damian did the paint job on it, which was again very translucent, those blues and veinies. I think it did look quite unique and quite horrible.
After I saw the movie, that was the thing I was dying to go home and do a drawing of, was the neomorph.
Yeah.
I gotta say, it of course instantly calls to the original xenomorph design, but it was very different. And like I said, it was kind of the opposite of biomechanical, very kind of translucent and maggoty and sickly looking. And I also noticed that there was there were variations on the design from the newborn to the ones in the lab, and I think the two that were running around, or I thought I saw more than two running around. I couldn't quite tell. There's been debate over that. I have to watch it again, but there seemed like different ones had slightly different designs. And again, going into spoiler territory here, a particular character gets her head bitten off, which for me as a horror scene was very fascinating. I had a lot of thoughts on it. That head looked very realistic. Did you guys make that head, or was that a digital composite was that a 3D? Like, I couldn't tell. I really, CG is getting good, but so is, the talent of the practical effects artist. So was that...
Yeah, no, that was 100% practical. That was all us. Yeah, all that work. So
fantastic.
Yeah, and those guys did a great job of it. And yeah, I mean, I was literally on set, rotating the turn in the water there with some monofilament, real old school. I mean, that's the thing. Ridley is old school. He loves practical effects. He loves in-camera stuff, and he gets in there himself. I mean, fondest memories of working on the film were with Ridley himself, and we'd be dressing certain puppets or effects scenes, and he'd always be referencing, the original Alien with, seafood and things like that. So very, very hands-on. But yeah, no, getting back to that head, yeah, that was all us.
Brilliant job. I gotta say that head was it felt like a classic horror movie moment to me. And, and I was, part of, sometimes you have that debate. You go, did they map the actress's face onto a CG model and it's just gotten that good, or is this a victory for I'm so glad to hear it's a victory for the practical effects, because I mean that looked like a real head and it was so creepy, and I just got to say bravo on that one, because that was I think that was quite a feat, very satisfying, and it's satisfying. And it must have been satisfying for you as well to be in there with a talent like Ridley Scott, who has a very strong design sense. I think that's why I love him as a director so much. As an artist, he's an artist as well. So to have him in there, like shoulder to shoulder with you, being happy with your work, I mean, that must have been very satisfying.
Yeah. Oh, it was. I mean, just working with Ridley was just a huge honor, And you're right. He's very much, he's a brilliant artist, very hands-on. Draws, nobody wants keep your toes, because he'll sort of change things up at the last minute, so you have to be prepared to sort of change a shot, change an angle, you can't sort of go on to the set with an effect that could only be gotten away, because Ridley doesn't work that way. But yeah, so sorry, getting back to chatting about with the rod puppet. Yeah, so the neomorph had there were a few stages of its life cycle. So you see the baby, which is sculpted by Rob Trenton, and then the next, it grows very quickly, as you know. So we had a small rod puppet for that one, and then a slightly bigger one, which we called the terrier, which was kind of like, the size of a small monkey. Which again was sort of rod puppeteered. And then the chestburster itself was a rod puppet as well. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those translucent
So,
arms, and that was all real time? That was going on set?
yeah.
Fair.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean that I think there's a lot of controversy about the look of it, I guess, being quite different from the original. But Dominic Hailstone sculpted that one, and it was a lovely puppet. It was beautiful translucent silicone, and the armature in that was built by, again, Greg McKee, but he sort of sculpted the alley to, look like bones. So yeah, it's translucent silicone. You can see into, skeletal kind of, understructure, which is, it was a beautiful. But we actually,
I thought it was a nice touch, actually.
Got some footage of it in the workshop, which we haven't released yet, but of us sort of all, doing some early sort of tests with it and filming it, and it's a lovely little puppet.
Well, you just made my day saying that, because for me, I don't buy a Blu-ray unless I know there's going to be tons of special features on it showing that stuff. So, it's like, hey, Alien Covenant's out on DVD. Do you want it? What are the special features? I'll wait for the one with the special features. Put that back on the shelf. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that stuff. I hope you guys, so are you guys going to release, do you have a YouTube channel? Are you guys going to release to that?
We do have a YouTube channel. Pretty rubbish at getting stuff up on it, to be honest. We're more sort of Instagram and Facebooky. But we'll try to be better at.
I'll put links to that in the description of this podcast so people can check that out, because I do very much enjoy your Facebook and your Instagram. And I'm going to move us along a little bit, because it's not, Alien Covenant's kind of like the hot issue right now. You guys also worked on Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chess, Dead Man Tell No Tales, sorry. My mistake. I have not seen that one yet, so I'm not really qualified to talk about that one. But, you guys are really, you've really been one of those studios that's gotten to work on some of the the classic movies. Now you worked on Star Wars Episode 3. I'm an unabashed fan of the Star Wars prequels. Actually, I have no shame in admitting it. I really enjoyed them, and I really feel, one of the things that was very interesting to me about that is, for Star Wars Episode 3, you guys did the costuming, right?
So this is before we were set up as Odd Studio. We were working on that as freelance artists.
Okay.
Adam, you were in the costume props.
I was in the costume props department and working on the Vader suit, amongst other things. And Damian, was in the creature shop. Dave Elsey working in there. So
I actually jumped ship a little bit early.
It was fascinating to me, because it was like I was watching behind the scenes on that, and it was, the costume department it wasn't just creating costumes, it was, handling things like the storytelling, but like the battle on Mustafar, it's like you guys had to were you the one like putting all the burn marks from the lava spill as they're fighting? Is like that sort of thing going on?
Not us personally, no, but the department, yes. But personally for me, it was working on the Vader suit, because as I sort of mentioned earlier, Star Wars was the film that I was obsessed with, as a child, and working on a Vader.
Yeah, you must have had a moment there where you had it in front of you working on it, and you like, did you have just that like, oh my God moment? This is actually happening. Did you have to like sit down and put your head between your legs and take deep breaths or something?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I did. The original Empire Strikes Back Vader helmet came in to. I was running the mold department, and it came in and landed on my desk, and so I molded that, and we got copies of that to use as reference. So that was equally fantastic and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not stressful at all. Mold this piece of sci-fi movie history that probably is, probably considered a treasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
terrifying.
I mean that's the amazing thing to me, and like I said, it's why it's a pleasure to be able to talk to you guys like you. I mean, it's I am an amateur film director. I direct like stuff out of my garage, and but part of it's just kind of like, to me it feels like living the fantasy. It's like I'm not in a big studio or anything like that, but it's like I'm calling directions to people in my garage with like these monsters made out of packing tape. And in my mind, it's kind of like being a kid. It's like, when you're a kid and you set up your own haunted house or you try things for the first time, it's like, it's like when you come home from watching Star Wars and you find like the broomstick and, that's the lightsaber, And I don't think you ever, I don't know, I'm sure you guys never lose that feeling when you're working on this stuff too.
No, we don't at all. Yeah, you're absolutely 100% correct there. Yeah, it is like that. We're incredibly lucky and blessed to be, doing this as a living, for a living. It's amazing.
Regularly those moments where you think if you go back and tell your childhood you that this was going to happen one day, you wouldn't believe it. So that.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm totally with, and even like I said, I've gotten to meet a lot of my kind of childhood special effects idols through this show and through living in Los Angeles, people that I talk to, and you get kind of shaky, you get kind of nervous, and everyone seems super nice and super humble. Like, yeah, I did that, and it was a lot of fun. And hey, you want to see this like dinosaur I'm working on at the moment? You're like, yes, I'd love to, and they're the same thing with them. They still have the same, like, I'm making a dinosaur right now. You want to see it? It's not done yet. And I think that's what makes this, what makes it so special, because it's not just a job. And, it could be aliens. I don't mean like Alien Covenant. I mean, like, you could be asked to work on aliens or cyber robots or whatever it is. It's like, it's like being asked, like someone's coming and saying, hey, you want to go play in the sandbox? And by the way, we're paying you for it. And I got to say, one of the things is vampires. And I just got to ask about this a little bit, because one of the movies I always get made fun of for saying that I love, but I do. And it's like, it's nothing like the book, and I don't care because it was just so much fun, was the Queen of the Dam movie. And I assume that was before you guys formed Odd Studio, that you got to work on that. Or was...
Yeah, that's right. That was with Bob McCarran was doing the effects for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well,
I'm glad to hear you liked it.
Yeah.
You guys seem a little shifty that I brought it up.
I've never actually seen it.
Oh, really? Well, I'll say it's one of those movies. It's like, it's super goofy in a lot of ways, but there's just something about it, with the music and all that sort of thing I really enjoy. There's a lot that's cheesy about it, and that's probably why I love it so much. It kind of, because there are those movies that, it's like when you watch something like Reanimator, there's a lot that's goofy about it, but you still get a hell of a kick out of it because of that goofiness. And if you thought, if they remade it now and they tried to make it serious and make all the special effects perfect, that's missing the point. So maybe that's the reason. Another one I wanted to ask you guys about is, now you guys got to work for George Miller, and you worked on Babe 2, doing a lot of animatronics and puppets, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Again, that was pre-Odd Studio. I was in the mold department working. Neil Scanlon was doing the animatronics for that. Pig in the City. So yeah, that was my first film credit. That's the first film I ever worked on. Was Babe, Pig in the City, and it's special for a lot of reasons. I actually really love the film too.
Well, a lot of people do. I mean, I was like, I used to hang out in Hollywood, and there would be like death rockers with like big chains around their necks and the heavy eyeliner, and they're like, "Did you see Babe? Babe 2's coming out." Like, people just like really love that movie, And I was curious about it because it's like you worked on Mad Max Fury Road, which is also George Miller. And in my mind, I'm going, how do you get from Babe to... I mean, George Miller, that's one story, but, it's like I'm thinking to myself, did George Miller see your guys' work on Babe and go, I've got to get these guys for Mad Max? Or was it just purely coincidental that he came back to you? Or
we were put on to Mad Max Fury Road by the makeup and hair designer Leslie Vanderwalt, who we'd worked with so many times before. We originally met back on Farscape, and we'd produced prosthetics for other jobs with her, and she invited us to join the team. She's worked with George Miller on most of his films, from Mad Max 2 onwards, really.
So were you guys...
Yeah, that's how we got to know it.
Did you guys go out, because that was shot in Africa, right? Did you go out to Africa, or were you making stuff for that and it was getting shipped out there?
No, so I went over to Africa. So we started pre-production here, doing soft testing and producing some of the prosthetics and trying to lock down the looks, and then we went over to Africa, into Namibia, and we set up a small workshop over there, and basically, we were applying and making prosthetics, feeding the beast every day.
That was, and that was, I mean, there's a crazy amount of work in that. I think people kind of just see generally the makeups and think that stuff was just painted on, but I'd imagine there were a lot of scarification, forehead pieces, a lot of pieces that melded with the costuming, and that wasn't a real pregnant belly, obviously, or not so obviously. It looked pretty convincing to me, but I mean, you're out kind of, I mean, were you like in the middle of nowhere, or is it, is it?
Yeah, we're in a small town in called Swakopmund in Namibia, and the set would be anywhere from half an hour to an hour away. There was just such a variety of landscapes around that they could get all these incredible locations. So it'd be going out to a tent village and putting on prosthetics in the morning. So all the war boys have scarification, three-dimensional scarification. So there's a lot of rubber. Pretty much every main character has at least one prosthetic on.
That must have been a very unique experience, just kind of almost like camping and working at the same time. Because I'd imagine, like you said, you're working in a tent set. I imagine it's hot out there. You don't have access to all the kind of luxuries of the first world, so to speak. So it must have been, I don't know. It sounds like an adventure. You never know what you're going to get when you get asked to do these things.
No, certainly not.
So
it was fantastic. It's a great team as well.
Well, I think that it's been a fantastic show. We're just about out of time. I would like to ask you to stick around for a little just after show chat, which I produce for my exclusively for my Patreon supporters. Just take a few minutes, but if we usually end with shout outs, and I was going to do some questions. Actually, you know what? I'm going to rewind a bit. Let me just give you guys a couple of questions really quick that from my listeners, which I didn't mean to psych you out there, but it'll be quick. A question from Ryan Conley, who is here in Texas. He has a YouTube show called Film Riot, which I enjoy a lot. He's a huge fan of Alien Covenant, and he asks, will you guys do the effects for my next movie? But it's actually it's a funny question to me, because I think a lot of people don't realize, you do these big movies, but most effects companies, if you have a budget, can usually work something out for a smaller company. It's not an impossible thing.
No, it's not. Not at all. Absolutely. We just love working and making stuff. So, lucky to be busy with, films, big and small budgets, short films, TV, commercials, art installations, theatre, anything really. yeah, I think that's having the ability to sort of put on a lot of different caps as well, and not just do prosthetics and not just do animatronics, but model making and costume props, practical things. And yes, to answer your question, yes, we would love to work on your film.
And another question comes from a listener of mine. He has a bit of a fixation on air bladders. His name's Ed Mohawk, and he wants to know, what's your favorite air bladder effect?
We go back to spasms.
Spasms?
Yeah.
All right.
Then, I mean, the air bladder stuff on the Howling's pretty awesome as well. But then,
I don't know. Yeah.
Nutty Professor as well.
Nutty Professor test footage. Yeah. The Howling. I'm going to say Howling. Yeah.
So we'll go with a consensus of the Howling and spasms.
Yeah. There you go.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap the show up for real. We do we usually end with shout outs. So is there anybody that you guys would like to give a shout out to before we wrap the show?
Yeah, Jaco Snyman in South Africa, because I've been meaning to Skype him and I haven't, and I'm going to. He was with us on Mad Max Fury Road. Fantastic artist, Johannesburg.
Fantastic. Excellent. And I would love to give a shout out to my own special effects artist, Jenna Green, who worked on my film, The Quantum Terror. I've given her a shout out on the show before, but she's recently just gone above and beyond, helping me finish up effects for my movie. So I wanted to give a big shout out of appreciation to her. And I'm going to do a second shout out to Derek Hunt, who is managing the sound and the music for my movie. He's been absolutely amazing to me. So I'm forever grateful for the people that helped me with my own projects, and actually helped me with the setup for recording this show after I had a catastrophic failure interviewing Fawn Davis. I hope Fawn will come back and help me recover his interview. So, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. This is Christopher Moonlight for The Practical People. You can find me at patreon.com/Christopher Moonlight for exclusive content. And yeah, have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you, mate.
Thank you.